Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Watchmen, a phenomenal season finale. A lot of great things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously we find out how the whole Beyond and Adrian Chase situation happened. While he's giving his speech and everything, Beyond has snuck into his room, and apparently Adrian he keeps samples of his sperm. I'm wondering, why would you keep samples of your sperm if he never was with anyone? I guess at any point in time he deemed it necessary. I guess maybe it's more so like the end of his life type of thing of like, oh, I'm nearing my end, let my legacy continue on with some child. But why not? I guess because the last thing you want is someone else running around while you're still around. It's like, I'm good and I'm perfect as I am, so I don't need. It's so interesting because I was also curious like what Beyond's like, what her motivation was, and I guess it's just kind of like, well, the fact of the matter is I'm kind of here, I'm kind of up a nobody. It's like, well, screw you, Ozymandias. The fact of the matter is, look at this, I'll have a daughter, I guess, grow up and be greater than you, and maybe it's kind of like, oh, I'll benefit from it. Now with her, I'll be able to kind of live however I want to. I don't know if that's what she was kind of implying. It just, more so than anything, it seemed like, oh, it's a middle finger to Ozymandias. Just the fact of the matter is like, oh, I took one of your children. I had one of your children and you didn't know it. It seems like that was more so the thing, but maybe it is kind of what I said. I have no idea. I love, though, that True tracks him down literally. I mean, we don't know the full time frame, but basically she got to him a year before John did. So that was interesting. And obviously Adrian doesn't realize it, but she immediately was like, oh yeah, everything, the squid and everything, it's actually a really good plan. And he's like, oh shit, like someone else knows. So that was really interesting. And I even love that she kind of pokes fun at him by being like, oh yeah, it's a rerun and everything. And he's like, wait, what? She's like, oh yeah, it's a rerun. You had this one great idea, it was pretty good, but now you're just kind of, recycling that idea, which is interesting because even like the Senator Keene, even he made a point of that later on because, like, obviously Wade was like, oh, are you going to do the squid thing again? He's like, no, it was already done before. We're going to do something else. So it's just kind of interesting that, like, even they consider continuing to repeat what Ozymandias did, would be just, it's like, we'll find a different way to kind of handle things. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. But what I also like, though, is a little explanation. I feel like they didn't necessarily have to give it, but I thought it's such a neat explanation. It has so much implications. The fact is, he randomizes where the squids fall, which is interesting. I don't think that's ever been answered, because I think I just kind of assumed they kind of rained all over the world all at once type of situation, but it seems like no, they rain in different spots all the time because he doesn't want to take the chance someone who's else that's somewhat smart decides that, like, oh, I'm going to calculate where, just find a pattern, because even Wade was trying to find the pattern and, like, oh, so he can determine when the big one was coming. And the last thing you want is anyone to be able to create a pattern from this, because it'd be like, okay, if they can nail it down to a science of when and where it's going to happen, it allows them to have a more proper defense, which kind of gets rid of the whole fear. The whole point of driving the fear home is by making it pop up random places so it's unpredictable, hence making it so, like, all right, we still have to be wary of, like, this could still go down at any point at any place. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting element, and I feel like they didn't necessarily have to answer, but it's good that they answered that because that's just a neat thing to think about in a grand scheme of things. And I do like that we get, Lady True's ultimate plan. Basically, she's going to take what Ozymandias did. It's like, yeah, you did a good job of all that, but eventually this can't keep up forever. Obviously, there's going to be a point where it's like, there's going to need to be a new solution. Because, like, when everything's all said and done, the fact of the matter is, there's going to be an arms, nuclear arms face off again. So it's like, how do we stop all that? It's like, well, we get rid of all the nuclear arms in the world. Only person powerful enough to do that is John, but obviously John isn't willing to do that. So Lady True's thing is she's going to become Dr. Manhattan herself and gain all that. And the moment she threw that idea, I immediately was like, wait a minute, are you working with with Cavalry 7? I started thinking that because I was like, well, obviously that's their plan. I was like, is that your plan? But in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense that it wouldn't be, because it's like, well, obviously she's Asian, she's Vietnamese. So they wouldn't, obviously, like, the 7th Cavalry, even Keene, no matter how he wants to fancy it up, they're racist. So of course they would never work with her. So obviously that should have immediately knocked it out of my head. But it's like, no, it seems like they had a similar thought, a plan. But it seems like, well, the thing is, and that's the point to show you how smart she is. She literally came up with a solution 10 years before Keen and them even considered it. So it shows you just how far in advance she was thinking. Hell, she's even the one that told Ozymandias where John was, because even he was like, oh, John's on the moon. It's like, on Mars. It's like, oh no, he's not. He's actually on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah. And now we kind of correlated the whole, like, it's like, oh yeah, I have a satellite that's going to get there every like 5 years or something at this certain specific time. And then it cuts back to like, oh, him, putting up the bodies together. So right. And then I clicked in my head. I was like, and I remember the message. We never got to see that part of it. It's like, save me. And it says a D. I'm like, daughter, especially because he made such a fuss, because obviously she wanted some money, but he was like, the fact of the matter is, my family left me a whole bunch of money. I gave it away. I started from nothing and rose to something, because he didn't want to, because Ozymandias is narcissistic as he is, and it's like, I'm so great, I'm going to make my money on my own because I don't need anyone's help. I want to be able to start from zero. And he's like, that's what I'm giving you, 0. He won't even call her by her name True. He calls her by her like specimen number, that being 2, 3, 4, 6, which is very disrespectful. It kind of immediately made me think of the Umbrella Academies, how rather their father never called them by their actual names. He never actually gave them real names. He gave them numbers, so it's kind of a similar thing in that regard. It's interesting because obviously it's like, she is your spawn, so she's going to do what she does and kind of almost like want to. It's at first it was more so acceptance, but I think later on her motive shift from like, oh, I want to be accepted by you, to like, nah, I just want to surpass you and rub your smug face in a type of situation. But so he wasn't going to offer her anything, and he kind of turned her away. And then it's interesting because in the grand scheme of things, you made that letters and stuff like that, and like they spelled out daughter and everything, which you promised you would never do. Obviously, we cut to present day. He's making his escape because obviously True sent, a vehicle to come pick him up. That whole situation with the game warden was really interesting. Obviously, he shoots him, and I'm like, oh, you caught the bullet, right? Because you know the trajectory, you knew exactly where the bullet would land and stuff like that. Of course he did. But it was interesting, and it's like, oh, why did you put me behind this mask? And it was like, because, putting a mask on someone makes them cruel, which I guess, he takes that from the fact is, I don't know whether that's a direct reference specifically to like Rorschach, because out of anyone, I guess, to be fair, you look at like the comedian, he was pretty cruel. I think a lot of people tend to be cruel behind a mask. Hell, that could be an implication behind a lot of stuff. You could even apply that to real life, where it's like, people hide behind their anonymity and they feel like they can say and do whatever they want to. You could really cut it deep like that. But even if you looked at it just from the scale of the show, like you look at some of the people like the comedian who did a lot of terrible shit like behind the mask and stuff like that, because it's almost like people use their mask as an excuse, like I can hide my face, I can do whatever I want to. So that's how I was. I didn't read it at that time, but sitting here thinking about it kind of made me think of that. It might have been a parallel they were going for, but regardless. And I like that. It's like, plus, I got bored. I needed an adversary. And he's like, was I a good adversary? And I was like, well, he's not going to say what you want him to say. And then Ozymandias goes, no. I'm like, the dude's dying in your arms, and you couldn't give him that one thing. You're such an asshole, Adrian. And he's leaving and everything. Part of me wonders, is the Miss Crookshank that kissed him, could that have been the original Miss Crookshank? Because we've seen that the game warden is the original Mr. Phillips. Like, it's the Adam. I'm wondering, is that Miss Crookshank the Eve? Maybe not. It's interesting that one in particular ended up kissing him. That's why I'm kind of like, I'd assume she's been like the one that's the oldest and stuff like that. But regardless, there's also something I'm probably confusing myself about this because I'm thinking about it too much. Obviously, on the ship, it's like she kind of basically freezes him in gold, essentially carbonite. Like, once again, I'm not the biggest Star Wars person, but that that's a reference I can make. Basically, kind of freezes him in like that, and I'm like, well, I don't remember where it was. Wasn't it Angela and I think it was Angela and Lori went to visit Lady True, and they saw a statue of Adrian that was made out of gold, and I'm like, was that him the entire time? Has he actually been back on Earth for a little while, but she's only unthawing him now because everything's slowly falling into place? Or was that her, or was that just, the gold statue was there, and then like, it just happens like, we bring it, like, I don't know. because I super remember they made a reference of like, oh, look at this gold statue or something of him, and I think it actually was him. I think that's what it is. Like I said, not unless I'm overthinking it, because it said like, oh, now, so it made it seem like the ship had landed and kind of dropped him off. But I think that's the gold statue that's been sitting there the entire time. So God knows how long she's had Adrian back in the grand scheme of time frame and everything like that. They never really answered it. But I also love Lady True. It's like, okay, I might as well say this to you because obviously he's going to tell you the moment. He's most likely going to say something. And it's like, and her grandmother, her mom is like, oh, I'm your mom, aren't I? And it's like, yep. And even when Adrian sees her, it's like, you cloned your mother? And it's like, see, I told you he'd say something. So that was interesting. Which I'm wondering why I guess maybe there's a little distaste there or something like that. I also find it fascinating that he was able to look at her and recognize her. I mean, I guess he has it well enough minded. He knows, like, even though she was just kind of a servant and stuff like that, I guess he recognizes people's faces. Or maybe he's just like technologically speaking, like he can recognize a clone. I guess technically he spent so much time with them. So maybe that just makes him an expert, and he's looking in her eyes and like, oh, she's a clone. Oh, this kind of looks like your mother. Like I said, that kind of makes me think he's actually good with remembering faces. Like I said, maybe I'm reading, once again, too much into that, but still. So I was like, okay, so, Lady True was like, oh, you call me your daughter and everything. One thing you said you wouldn't. Oh, it must have really it's so sad. You must have had to finally lower yourself to kind of finally say that. So she's not of that opinion of like, oh my God, you said daughter. Oh, I'm so happy. It's like, no, you're an asshole. Fuck that. Like, she straight up got that type of mentality of like, you're an asshole. Oh, it really must have hurt you to really finally break down and kind of bend it and be in bended knee and basically beg me for help but you knew me seeing the word daughter would be enough to draw me in. That's all this was, So I just thought that was kind of, a fascinating element to that. So there's that whole situation. And obviously, they're moving out. Oh, we also learned what the clock was about. The clock was to fill that role. The Millennium Clock is supposed to be the device she used to make herself and steal Dr. Manhattan's powers, kill him, and make her into that. And now in the grand scheme of things, it's like, oh, no wonder you didn't want to tell Angela what the Millennium Clock was about, because they knew ahead of time. Or at the very least, she figured it out way in advance of like, oh, the fact is he's on Earth and stuff like that. Well, because who knows how long she's known. Maybe because, like, once again, she's always been a step ahead of everything and everyone. Well, to be fair, it kind of makes sense in the grand scheme of things when you actually think about it, because apparently, because she learned about it because Will told her, because in the grand scheme of things, I'm all over the place, but Will's price for killing all of Cyclops, at the very least its higher up members, to get rid of all of them, this is about his revenge. He's never let it go in all these decades. Why would he? Just like how much he lost to them. He lost so much to them because of what went down, the massacre in Tulsa and just everything that went, so obviously that stayed with him his entire life, so he wanted to make them pay. And John was surprised, so I'm sure he's the one that told Lady True God knows how many years beforehand. So it's like, Adrian's like, oh, the fact is, John's here on Earth, he's a human. It's like, yeah, no, I already got it. I figured it out a while ago. So that's where I'm kind of piecing that together. So there's that. Then, lo and behold, I had a feeling, at first I thought it was the first dude that was standing by Laura. I was like, it's gotta be Wade. Wade must have snuck in here. But I was like, oh, no, that's not Wade. And then Wade literally walks up. I'm like, there you are, Wade. I was waiting. And she's like, is that you, glass guy? And is that you, mirror guy? And he's like, it's looking glass. He's like, I know. He's like, damn it, lady, I'm here to save you. You're still talking shit. I love it. I love it. Even under these circumstances, it's so good. But obviously they end up capturing Dr. Manhattan, and obviously it's got to be a shock to Lori because she hasn't seen John in all these years, and to see him again, I'm surprised she didn't really comment on it, but maybe because she wasn't, I feel like she was close enough to notice it. Maybe she kind of had some inkling or feeling that he was Kyle, so it wasn't that big of a shock, or maybe she didn't really recognize him just because it's like, oh, you're blue and everything. But I don't know. Maybe that's something not to get too caught up on, but she recognizes, oh, it's John and everything, obviously, because he's like literally the only blue person around. But it was interesting. So there's that whole situation. And I love they circle back to something they have not touched since the first episode. They're like, oh, this cage, we made it out of the materials from old school batteries of watches. I'm like, thank you. That was, almost literally forgotten about that if they hadn't mentioned it, because that was something that happened in season one. It's like at the beginning, the first episode was like, what the hell are they doing that for? And they never circle back to like what they were doing. This is the first time explaining, oh, that's what that was all about. I'm like, okay, you're building a cage so that he kind of, it dampens his powers, so he's kind of stuck. He can't really, have access to all his powers, and he just kind of, and almost like drugged up. He's kind of loopy, kind of like the material that was in his head. I don't know. I don't think it's the exact same thing. Maybe it is the exact same material, but basically it's meant to kind of block it so that, it kind of his blind spot, but more so than anything, it's supposed to weaken him. And I love Joe kind of going into his evil explanation about everything. It was actually pretty neat. Once again, the whole thing of like, it's like, oh, the fact of the matter is us getting persecuted for stuff that people did all those years ago just because we were born in a certain skin. I'm like, do you not see the irony behind what you're saying? Like, oh, that because being scrutinized because of the skin that we have. I'm like, you don't see the irony in that. Like, I guess when you're that racist, and once again they'll be like, we're not racist. They literally said it last time. Oh, we're not racist. It's like, you sure as hell seem racist. But obviously the whole point was like, okay, so this whole thing in Tulsa, it went down like the whole point was to kind of balance the two, having, cops versus the 7th Cavalry, so that he can come in, oh, I can be the hero, save the day, lead to the presidency. But obviously there's everything that went, but it all changed White Knight, because it's like, I kept rewinding it because I didn't get it. I was like, why is Mike being in it? I was like, oh, what's that supposed to mean? I was like, oh, did Dr. Manhattan pretend to be him or something? I was like, I couldn't figure out like what he was getting at, and then it clicked in my head. I was like, right. How did Mike get all the way to somewhere else? He wasn't there. I was like, right. He attacked Angela. We remember now that John subconsciously trying to protect Angela, his powers activated. Obviously, he doesn't have full access to his powers because he doesn't remember, but on instinct, he used his powers. But instead of killing Mike, he teleported Mike. And that gave them what they needed to be like, holy shit, Cal is Dr. Manhattan. And they've just been waiting this entire time. They were probably just waiting for the opportunity to present itself, but also the whole situation of, trying to confirm it all. Is probably so Judd as well as Jane spend all this time getting close to it. That's why he made such a point to get close to Angela after White Knight, is to get close. It was like the plan was that, like, once again, it shows you, I mean, that's pretty neat that that's at least 3 years in advance you were planning out. Sadly, once again, Lady True was so many damn steps ahead of you, because I mean, she even said it herself, whereas Ozymandias is the smartest man in the world, she's the smartest lady in the world. So I just thought that was kind of a neat element to that. I even love Angela showing up and like, Lori, what are you doing here? She's like, Angela? And she's like, what are you doing here? She's like, oh, being kidnapped, being held against my will, that type of thing. So I love that. But obviously Angela tried to talk to King, because it's like, because I even loved him rubbing in her face of like, oh yeah, I'm going to, she was talking about the fact is he looks so silly in the panties. I'm sure I'm not getting the wording right, but it was like, you look so silly in those panties. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is I'm gonna have the powers of a god, and walking around with my penis in people's faces seems over. It was basically like that. Like it seemed overkill or something. I was like, I think that's kind of interesting. But Angela tried to stop and was like, don't do this. Like, the fact is, Lady True, she knew ahead of time. Like, she put you in this position, everything. He didn't want to listen. He thought he was so smart. Went to Machine, and it's like, and I love Lady True kind of being a dick, and she's like, oh, he was in there? Don't tell me he went in there. It's like, oh, let's, can't get the show started without him. Open it up, he's nothing but a pool of blood. I'm like, jeez. Poor bastard. At the same time, you're like, well, he was an asshole. So it's like, do you really feel that bad for him? And I love that, once again, Lady True's reading the notes and everything that Will had presented. And Jane's like, are you going to kill us? Just get on with it. It's like, okay, no, I am going to kill you. I was curious. I was about to see like how she was going to do it. And she ended up, vaporizing them into nothing. I was like, ooh. And literally all at once, literally in the blink of an eye, she evaporated all of them. So that was interesting. I also thought it was kind of fascinating because apparently, like, the teleporting, it kind of sends out a resonation that kind of like messes with people. It seemed like it disorientated everyone except for Wade. Now I'm wondering, is that a byproduct of just Wade, kind of having some sensitivity to it because of like being someone that was directly affected by like a psychic squid? I wonder, did that have some effect? Because he was the only one that threw up, but maybe it's just because like, well, everyone else was kind of used to the whole teleporting thing. I also love that this is our first time Ozymandias and Lori, and it's like, she's like, oh crap, I'm seeing you, I must be dead. And he's like, no, but the end is not. I didn't even talk about, and I love it. Like, he goes to that newspaper stand and everything. Well, obviously Lady Tree stops by, but he goes over and he's like, hey man, did you know you look so much like you look like? He's like, no, tell me. It's like that Ozymandias guy, and he was like, oh really? And it's like, yeah, nah, yeah, you look somewhat like him. You could play him at birthday parties or something like that. That had to be. It's like, oh, you don't even look like yourself. I think that happens. I think that's probably like a joke that happens sometimes when people say like, oh, you look, oh my god, I swear you look like that person. It's like, oh, but I am that person. Nah, wait, you don't look anything like that person. I think that happens from time to time. You hear stories from celebrities about that. Regardless, I'm going into tangent and stuff like that, but I love it. It's like, oh yeah, whatever happened to him? Well, stories is he went to the woods and he came into the forest and never came out. It's like, that's not what happened. It's like, well, what do you think happened to him? I think it got stuck on the moon of another planet. And it's like, and obviously he's still a little pissy about it. So that was interesting. So all that's happening, John uses Joe's blood as a means to kind of send his power through, and he teleported, Wade, Adrian, and Lori back to his base and everything. It's like, oh, because you got to do your thing on that side. And I love that. Like, Wade is like, oh, so this is where it all went down. This is where you sit the big one at. And Adrian's like, wait, you told him? And oh, of course you told him. And Lori's like, I didn't tell him. And then Wade's like, wait, you knew? And it's like, the whole thing, it's like, he was like, and Wade was like, oh, so I guess the entire FBI knows. And then even Adrian's like, wait, you're FBI? And she's like, yeah, I'm the head of hunting all the vigilantes. It's like, yeah, lots going down while you've been going, Adrian. I mean, to be fair, you were out of contact with them for a while before that all went down anyway. You lost even more contact, obviously being on a different planet, or the moon of another planet. But I just thought that was so fascinating in the grand scheme of things. And here she is, because for her, she's like, my dad, he was supposed to be here. Do you know how much trouble I went through to get him here? It's like, I don't need an audience. It's like, yeah, you do. The fact of the matter is, no matter how much you want to stress it, the fact of the matter is, you brought him here because, once again, you wanted to rub it in his face of like, oh, you think you're so smart, Dad? Look at me. I'm so smart. I'm the one that's going to fix everything. Because it's that whole thing of like, well, John is a god. The fact of the matter is, he could fix so much in the world, not just the nuclear weapons. He could end, world hunger, just a lot of pain and problems in the world. He could fix them, but he doesn't. It's almost kind of like that complicated thing with Superman. Superman being as powerful as he is, like, why isn't he kind of saving the world all the time? That's kind of an issue, but why don't you literally fix every problem? That's kind of like the complicated thing that is Superman, So it's kind of like, because it's always that thing of like, if Superman isn't literally saving people every second of every day, he's kind of an asshole. I don't see it that way because I guess I never really thought about it too deeply, but I could see someone pointing that perspective out and be like, I can understand where you're coming from with that perspective. I mean, it's also especially, and to me, I've always thought this, because once again, I never really looked at the whole like Superman being a god thing. I never really looked at that until Man of Steel. If it wasn't for Man of Steel, I would have never ever looked at Superman like that. Like, you were literally a god amongst men. Like, there's literally nothing on this planet except for, like, certain superpowered people who you weren't even aware of at the time, as well as rocks from your own planet that affect you like that. So you're literally a god amongst men. And I've always thought that was such a neat element that, like, other Superman canon, like, I've come across has, played with that. And it's like, but prior to that, I'd never really thought about it. So it's like the whole thing with Dr. Manhattan's like, that dude, you're literally a god amongst men. There's literally, and that Superman thing plays up even more in this universe because there's literally no one in this universe with the powers like you are. You are literally the only super being in this world, in this universe at the very least, So I just think that was just kind of, fascinating to kind of think about. So I love Adrian's plan was to basically freeze the squids and rain them down like Gatling gun bullets and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of, an interesting plan. It's like, well, you better hope no one you care about is down there, which obviously Wade and Lori are looking like they know Angela's down there. And so there was that moment, Angela like being like, no, fight. But obviously the device is activating. I even love it too because it's the whole thing about like, he knows for Lady that True wouldn't stop. Like, even if she gets these powers and stuff like that, maybe she might do what she claims she was going to do with, saving the world and everything, but it's not going to stop there because it's like, someone as narcissistic as her. But to be fair, he admits it's like, well, I know because like, well, it takes a narcissist to know a narcissist. Plus that said narcissist is your daughter. So obviously she takes after you. So you know what you would do if you had John's powers, maybe that's why he never attempted something like that, because it was like, oh, I know what I do, so like, you know, I'm too narcissistic. Maybe he's self-aware enough to realize I'm too narcissistic to ever own those powers, because it'd be too much of an issue for one. But I mean, because the whole point was like not to let one particular person have someone other than him have the access to those powers and everything. So there's that whole situation. So I thought that was kind of probably like, you know, a thought process that, you know, Adrian might have kind of thought of at, you know, one point in time. They warn Angela, and, you know, well, they call that booth, and Beyond is there, and, you know, kind of wakes Angela up. And I love that moment. You hear the doom, and then like Lady True look. I almost halfway expected it to kind of rip through her arms. I kind of also expected that scene to be bloodier than what it was. I would have felt bad if it was, but then like she lifts up her hand because it went piercing through her hand, and she's got a giant hole in her. I kept halfway expecting when she looks up, one was going to go straight down like a bullet and headshot her, you know, like straight down and kill her like that. The police showed it up, but obviously they're like, the little squids are raining down like bullets and stuff like that, knocking people down and stuff like that. It's destroying her device and everything, knowing that it was like basically her dad, which makes that situation even more sad. Like, you know, you wanted your dad's love and attention, and he ultimately ended up stopping you and killing you before you could get John's abilities. Which also begs the question, since they were in the process, like in that process of making you into John, right? Where did that energy go? Like, did that just dissipate? I guess when the machine got destroyed, that energy just dissipated, went out into the universe or something. Because I feel like energy isn't the whole thing. Like, and once again, this is someone who's not scientific, who's not smart. I'm an idiot. I'm gonna preface this by saying I'm a super big idiot. I'm not a smart person at all. But isn't it the thing of like energy? Well, I mean, I think, you know, you could look at it from like a hippie way, not hippie, but like a very like, oh, people, you know, energy never goes away. It just kind of finds a new way, it gets turned into something else. It's kind of what I'm going for. So I don't think that's a scientific thing. I think that is just kind of like a free spirited way of looking at things, because I think energy can straight up disappear, right? Once again, I'm an idiot. I'm not smart. So I'm just thinking like all that energy that was Dr. Manhattan's, where is it? I guess it no longer exists. But that was a sweet moment. I skipped over. I shouldn't have, but that moment where Cal, it's like, obviously because of the machine, it presented him an opportunity. She's like, where are you right now? Angela's like, where are you right now? And he's like, I'm with you every moment we were together all at once, and it's like, I love you, Angela. And that last second turning into Cal, because, that's who he was when he was in love with Angela. That's the face she's come to know for so long. And that's who he was, as a man that fell in love with her. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful, and sad ending, because I was almost like halfway expecting like, oh, maybe John found a way around this, but it's a thing of like, knowing what you accept your death because you already know everything's going to play out this way. I was also curious like where Angela was going, because she grabs like that case and she starts running. I'm like, yo, what's up with that? Beyond kind of gets inside of the booth and everything. So obviously she goes inside the theater and talks to her grandfather. All of this was John's plan. He saw this far in advance. The day he talked to Will all those years ago, he's the one that set this emotional like, sell me out to Lady True. And for everything to play out like this, it's for him to get justice against, this way, all those people get wiped out. So Will wins, but also John knew that everything was going to play out this way. So it's like, let it all play out that way. So things, can, end where they have to end, or they're supposed to end. So, and obviously Angela's having a hard time, except because it's kind of like you kind of sold him out, but obviously this was all John's plan, and that doesn't make it any easier, because it's like you knew this was all going to happen. You knew from the beginning. It's that complicated thing of, once again, of like, he knew, of course he knew to the last second, he knew things had to play out this way. But it's like, once again, it's a thing of like, why John never tried to fight destiny, because I guess for him it's like, because in the end, following destiny, things worked out in a way that he thought like, this is the best way. Because I don't think for John, he is this omnipotent thing where it's like he can see all the different outcomes. He sees what is going to be. But it's that whole thing of like, with the whole free will thing, it's like, he feels like it's all predestined. Like, this is the way it's going to be, not the way it's supposed to be. It's just, this is how it is. This is where things are going. So like for him, it's like everything's set in stone. There's no changing it, no fighting it. You just go with it. Even when you fight, the fact is you're actually playing along to it, so that's the whole complicated thing of like, the whole Dr. Manhattan situation. But I don't know. in the grand scheme of things. It's just crazy to think like how all this has come full circle like this, you know? And I love that conversation between Angela and Will, because it's like, well, you took all my nostalgia pills, so you know about me. It's like, yeah, right, like wearing the mask and stuff like that. For him, he always, obviously, watching the movies about Baskin Reeves, obviously, he wanted, justice. He believed in it. He believed that's why he became a cop and everything. But obviously, he found another way with, because it's like Baskin Reeves had to hide his identity up to a certain extent. It's like, well, I became Hooded Justice. And it's like, do you know what was underneath that mask? Anger. And it's like, at the time, Will was like, yeah, at the time, I thought so too. But it's like, it was fear, and I forgot what the other thing he was saying. It was basically like, fear and sadness. I wish I could remember everything Will had said. It was very like insightful and just kind of this nice, like, it was just this entire like nice conversation with Angela, but I can't remember the exact wording to it. I can't remember all the conversation altogether. I do apologize so much that I'm kind of messing up on that front. Some other interesting things was like we see like True's mom. I'm so curious to see what that means. Well, the clone of True's mom, but I'm curious like what does that mean? Especially because now you're obviously the clone, but you're a little girl who has the memories of an older woman. Especially knowing now like, oh, your daughter's dead. That's gotta hit you a certain way. That's the woman that you thought was your mom is actually your daughter, and now it's like, oh, she's going to. And I mean, that could be an interesting thing in itself, knowing that like literally the man you got, the sperm from is kind of behind her dying. So that's, I don't know what to kind of make of that. Maybe it's just kind of like, well, she'll find some other home, but I'm sure she's still, well, because that was mainly because that was something True was doing. Like, as long as she's not consistently doing it, I'm sure there's going to be memories that are already there, but I'm curious, like in the grand scheme of things, if that's going to be something would that be, something that will come up again, because like the memories are already there, because she was pumping her full of like nostalgia pills. That's what she was kind of experimenting on her daughter with. Some like, well, her mother. So I'm wondering, I don't know what to make of that. That could definitely be an interesting thing on its own. But I guess Angela didn't want to answer any questions because the police are so occupied and stuff like that. So she just kind of gets her family and her grandfather. And it's like, hey, the fact of the matter is, got a place you can stay with us for a little bit. So, and as they were leaving, like the oldest kid sees, her outfit as Sister Knight. And it's like, whoa, which is almost history repeating itself. Because remember, like, Will's son found out about him, and obviously that led to a complication. So the point is, like, now that your oldest knows what your whole deal is, how will the kid, that one in particular, respond? Like, are we going to have a similar case, or will it be kind of more embracing of it? I don't know what to make of that. I guess that, could once again be a story all on its own. But there was that line that Will said, like, hey, if you want to make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs. I was like, yeah, I figured it had something to do with the eggs. So I was like, I didn't get it. And then looking at the eggs, you can see that there was one still in there. And I was like, what is, I was like, right, the bar, the whole thing about putting the power in the egg. And then Will said, like, yeah, the fact is, John, I'm sorry that he's gone, but the fact of the matter is, as powerful as he was, he could have done more. And so she cracks open the egg. I almost was skipping over the whole other thing too. I figured I should go ahead and circle. Well, the whole thing kind of gets in Angela's head of like, okay, so maybe I take this and potentially get John's power. Like I said, we'll circle back to the ending. But obviously there's the whole situation with Adrian Chase. It's like, all right, it's like, oh yeah, here's Archie, which is the actual Archie. We kind of learned like, okay, so that other Archie we saw, like, copies were kind of made for the police and everything. But this is OG Archie, which obviously is very nice. But it's like, Adrian's like, well, I'm about to go. It's like, and Laurie's like, oh no, you're not going anywhere. You're under arrest. He's like, what? I was like, oh, you almost had me. It's like, oh no, it's not a joke. The fact of the matter is, you killed over 3 million people. And he was like, oh, what are you talking about? And then the fact of the matter is, Wade is like, oh, I had the obviously what Joe had, burned off a disc of, his confession and everything. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is, what are the FBI going to do? Arrest me and the president because he knew about it? It's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So Laurie's kind of down for that. So that's kind of neat in that regard. And obviously Adrian's kind of talking about the fact that, well, I saved the world not once, but twice, blah, blah, blah. Wade knocks him over the head. It's like, that guy talks way too much. It's like, he sure does. So they're dragging him off. So it's so interesting. Adrian went through, and it's kind of ironic. He came back to save the day, sure, but in the end, he's going to pay for what he did. He didn't get. I like that though. It is a thing of like, it's not like he got away with this scot free. I mean, he did for a while, but justice kind of found a way. I mean, to be fair, he was kind of imprisoned on Europa, and it's like technically you might have been better off being there, but you were so bored and you're so narcissistic and wanting to be, I mean, hell, that's why he let True in the first place, because she was like, oh my God, you're so amazing, you're so smart, you came up with such a great plan. She inflated his ego, and so him wanting to kind of be, congratulated and stuff like that, because no one on Earth is going to know what he really did, But, it's like, oh, this is where I need it. These billions on Earth are my children, so I got to look after them. And it's like, yeah, those sad children are going to be your undoing to a certain extent. I think that's interesting. But finally, our final scene of the episode, she cracks open the egg, which in the back of my mind, I'm like, you ain't going to cook that up? I guess you want to take the chance. It's like, well, if it works, it works. So you don't have to worry about that. But I'm like, still, I might want to cook that up. But hey, you do your thing. But the moment she's getting closer to water, I'm like, oh, that's going to be one of those shows, ain't it? It's going to be one of those shows. You're going to leave it. You're going to cut the black, aren't you? I was like, you're going to do it, aren't you? And it's like, I was like, they kept showing her foot going closer. I'm like, you're going to do it, aren't you? I was like, oh, maybe not. Maybe you're going to visit. Oh, nope, you fade to black. Okay, of course. So you kind of Soprano'd us, which is interesting. I've never seen The Sopranos, but I know that that's kind of basically how The Sopranos ends, like a close fade to black, where it's like, oh, did it go this way or did it go that way? I mean, with this situation, I guess it's befitting, because it's like, well, what do it's a little bit of that Inception thing. It's kind of like, what do you want that ending to be? It could be whatever you make it be. I think that's literally what Christopher Nolan said about the ending. It's kind of like, it's what you make of it, So it's kind of this. It's like, did Angela get her abilities? Once again, it was a theory, but maybe there was some truth to that, So that in itself sets up some very interesting implications, because it's almost this thing of like, oh, the world could have another Dr. Manhattan, maybe not. Obviously, this puts the show in a very unique position. I know that Damon Lindelof has said he had no plans beyond a season 1. He wanted to make this a one-off. But obviously, a lot of people would want to see a season 2. You could take the show in other locations. It wouldn't have to go to Tulsa again. But the complicated thing with that is, though, I mean, this is my personal opinion. I feel like you'd have to answer that sooner or later. You'd have to give a definitive response. You could go without doing that. I think you could, but I think that's always going to be a question in the back of everyone's mind. What about that whole Angela thing? Because I think the whole point was you don't want it answered. You want it left to kind of be like, oh, I want it to be open-ended, kind of take what you want from it, make your own thing. Honestly, I don't know what to take from it. It's not, I can't be, I'm not creative. Well, I don't, when situations like that, I don't like to give a definitive answer either. Or just like, oh, do I think Angela got the power or do I think she didn't? I leave it as, we'll never know. And I'm kind of fine with that, I knew they were going to do something, slick like that, but I'm fine with it. I'm not one of those people like, oh, how could you live it over? I'm totally fine with that, under these circumstances. So, like I said, I feel like you would have to answer that, but maybe you could get around not having to answer it, because I'm sure Angela would probably keep it to herself, but I feel like there'd be certain events that would probably wink to like whether or not, cause I don't know, because I guess it depends on whether Angela, if she got the powers, what that would mean in the grand scheme of things of her trying to do better for the world. We might see some changes, and the whole thing is like, oh, is that just the world itself, or is that because of what Angela did? Hell, the implications of having Adrian arrested, even the president arrested, the whole conspiracy being revealed, that is something to kind of think about too, because a lot of that was not, grander questions in the world of Watchmen weren't 100% answered in that regard. You can imply what that could potentially mean, but you won't actually see the aftermath. This was all about kind of Angela's story to a certain extent. It all kind of stemmed from Angela's story. It's other people's story too, but you get what I'm trying to say. So what this whole thing means in the grand scheme of things, I don't know. Like I said, the whole talk has been that this is supposed to be a one-off. Whether it stays that way, I'm not sure. I just actually finished looking it up, and it kind of confirms what I said. Like, Damon Lindelof has kind of made it clear, like, he wants this to kind of be a one and done. And even, I think it is a thing of, if this did come back for a second season, he wouldn't necessarily be a part of the project anymore. Because for him, it's like, he's told the story he wants to tell. And that's always my thing. I'm always for a show going on forever. So if they decided they want to go on forever with Watchmen, I'd totally be fine with that. I know people have their issues with that, but I'm not one of those people. If I like a show and it keeps going on forever, I'm totally always going to support that. That's just me. Like, I know for people, it's like, what's like, oh, fears of something go up and down. That's just I don't worry about that stuff. I just watch something and enjoy it. That's all there is to it, and I don't get caught up in that. To each their own type of situation. So. But to me, I'm always down for someone ending something when they want to. Because I never want some show to be in a situation of like, well, we've been going on for this long. Things are kind of open-ended. And sadly, the show got canceled last minute. So you'll never get a conclusion. I hate that more so than anything. So if someone's like, this is a one and done. Okay, as long as that was your choice and not just like a thing of a byproduct of like, oh yeah, you were forced in this position. It's like, no, Lindelof told the story he wanted to tell. So I'm like 100% being like, if you decide you don't want to do any more Watchmen, I'm 100% behind that. If you decide like, oh, we're going to do more Watchmen, I'm 100% behind that too. So at the end of the day, it depends on what they decide to do. Like I said, I'm fine either way. Maybe not a lot of people agree with that. Some people are like, no, get a second season. Like I said, it comes out of everyone's personal choices. So that's where my mindset is. But yeah, I think I've talked long enough. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.